Okay, well, I say we just get going. If you all have any questions in regards to your specific kiddos, go ahead and just let me know. But I'll just run down through this and then parents can take a peek at it.
Okay.
So as you know, I am Cindy McKibben. I am one of the two owners. I think you met Jenny and I of McKibben and Monty. And McKibben and Monty started in Columbus about 6 years ago as speech therapy only and providing services to private preschools and daycares as a convenience for parents and in a place where a child's comfortable so they can really perform at their best. Um, Preschools and daycares really give us the opportunity also to work with the teachers so that you all are on board and we can empower you all as to how to help these kiddos and carry over anything that we're working on in a therapy setting. Since that time, 6 years ago, McKibben and Monty has evolved into a lot more than that. So we're a much more comprehensive therapy team. Now providing occupational therapy for kids that have concerns with fine motor skills, some of those social emotional regulation issues that we've seen really explode since COVID, unfortunately, and also obviously providing speech therapy as well. Today, I just want to talk a little bit about how you all, as parents and caregivers, can support your own child's language development. Um, a lot of this might be very second nature to you as parents. So I understand that. So I'm going to kind of skim through it. But if there's any questions, feel free to give me, shout out and I can stop and explain things further. Basically, as speech pathologists, I think that there is a misconception that all we really work with is those kiddos with R's and L problems. But we actually work with a lot more, particularly because of the demands that are now being placed on kids in kindergarten. Teachers are really expecting that these kiddos come in with a complete foundation in place for language and most recently literacy. And speech and language development and literacy go hand in hand. So we address a lot more than speech sound production, but we do continue to address those kiddos that have those articulation needs. So kids that have speech sound errors. And those speech sound errors, where that really impacts things is that if kids don't have sounds in place, they're going to have difficulty understanding what the sound or the letter goes along with that when they go to decode for reading. So for instance, if we were to look at the child with a wa, like a W for an R, such as a wabbit for rabbit, if they're producing it with a W, they are not going to know that that sound is a when they go to sound out a word. So it is really critical that these kids, when they go to kindergarten, really truly from our perspective, have all of their sounds in place. In addition to that, we really address expressive language, how well a child is putting their words together to express themselves and their wants and needs. We address receptive language, which is how well they're understanding directions and understanding concepts that are being taught in the classroom. We definitely address social communication. So how well is a child interacting with their peers? And do they have the words to request an object during playtime or to deny a friend from having something or from touching them? So that social communication piece is definitely an area that needs to be addressed in those preschool years as well. In addition, we really do address feeding as well. That is kind of a speech and an occupational therapy line, but we really, parents in their busy lifestyles really are sometimes challenged with kiddos that are picky eaters. And picky eating can be a lot more than just a child not wanting a food. It can be really a sensory issue. And so that is where speech and occupational therapy can get involved as well. I kind of address the early literacy skills. And then in addition to that, obviously we look at play skills as well, because we need a child to learn how to play in order to have that foundation in place to want to communicate as well. So let's just go over a couple of general language milestones. Again, you all will have access to all these slides, but I think just a couple of mile markers that are important to understand so that, again, we understand kind of the red flags and when a child is not developing age appropriate. When we look at a 12-month-old, some of the things we as parents really want to make sure those kids are able to do is follow some very simple directions. And that might include a gesture. So we are not always expecting those kids to understand it just based on how the verbal command we're giving them, but we often as parents, go ahead and give them a gesture. So can I have that toy? And that if you put your hand out, they're able to understand that and give it to you. Also, we expect that a child at 12 months is going to have a handful of words. So they're going to start, they've been listening to language for a very long time. And so now that receptive language might be developing or has developed, and now we expect that they, in addition to that, will start using words and sounds. It appears as if I might have another person here. Let me just check. Hi, Taylor. Thanks for jumping in.
Hello.
Hi there. I'm Cindy McKibben, and I'm a speech pathologist. And we will provide you all with a recording of this, but you kind of jumped in at a good time. We are just looking at talking about the general language milestones and what we can expect of different ages for our children. If you have any questions, feel free to just to ask me or send me a chat, and I can answer any specific questions. But we were just talking about the 12-month-old, and 12-month-olds, we expect that kids can follow some simple directions, that they have a handful of words, about 5 to 10 words in their vocabulary, and that they also are able to have some joint attention. And that's really a biggie. And when I mean joint attention, I mean that we are both attending to the same thing. And so if I'm showing a child a toy, or we are at the snack table or at the meal table, that if we draw their attention to something, they are able to look at that with us. And the reason for that is that we expect at this point there's a lot of social reciprocity. So even though kids might not be using words, that if we look at them or we laugh, that we expect they're going to be able to laugh. Or if we say ba 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 ba, we want them to be able to say ba 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 ba. So that joint attention is really important to have established at 12 months of age. At 24 months of age, we really are going to start seeing some explosion of language. So we expect kids that are 2 years of age are going to have about 50 words, that they actually are going to start stringing 2 words together. So it's my ball or me eat. We're going to start seeing 2 words coming together at the age of 2. And honestly, we're going to expect that what those kids are producing or those words they're using, we would expect that an unknown listener or somebody that is not familiar with that child would understand them half of the time. So they have enough sounds in their repertoire that we're understanding whether it's the use of gestures and verbal communication or vocalizations, but that we understand the message that they're trying to deliver about 50% of the time. We also expect kids that are 2 years of age that they can point to their body parts, and honestly, that they probably can label some of their body parts as well at that point. When we're 3 years of age, we're going to really see, honestly, a huge of explosion of words. Kids at this point should be understood 3/4 of the time, or 75% of what they say should be understood without a parent translating for them. They should be asking questions at this point. So they're really curious about their surroundings. Now they can put their words together in a way that they can actually ask questions to get more information from you. And at this point, we expect that these kids are using 3-word sentences. So language is really exploding. And then at 4 years, honestly, they're pretty good conversationalists with us. So these kids are we ask and we expect that kids are everything they're saying, we understand them. If they are using some substitutions for certain sounds, they're using those substitutions, but they're still able to communicate their points with their other words. We expect that they can follow multiple step directions. So in the classroom, you can say, or at home, you can say, hey, Sarah, will you take these shoes and go put them up in your closet? Okay, they should be able to do that at 4 years of age. And in addition to that, they should be able to express all of their wants and needs. We really, at about the age of, honestly, by 2 and 3, kids should not be frustrated trying to communicate with you and throwing temper tantrums. That should be one of the biggest first red flags. At the point that kids get frustrated communicating, we really have kind of hit a brick wall and we don't want them to get there. So if we start seeing that, it's really a great time to get therapists involved. And the reason for that is that we'll really find that those kiddos start to kind of become more reclusive and not wanting to communicate because they're not getting across their point. Um, Let's talk a little bit about how language translates into reading. And I think this is a great chart that you all can spend a little bit of time looking at later. But again, if we were to go back to kind of those 2 and 3-year-olds, we are expecting that, we know that kids are being introduced to books at this point, and every day kids need to be introduced to books. You as parents know that. I think what parents so often feel is that they've got to introduce a new book every day, which is absolutely the wrong, is not our perspective at all as speech pathologists. You can use the same book. If a child has a special interest in a book, you can use that book in so many different ways. And you can go from reading the book to the child to the point that they actually are telling their own story with that same book. They do not need to rely on those words. But by 2 years of age, we really expect that kids are pointing to pictures when you're asking them, where's the ball, or can you find, where's the horse? That they can find those pictures in a book. And that they're interested in books. They might not be able to sit down for an entire book, but at least they're interested in pointing to the pictures if you draw their attention to them. At 3 years of age, we think that those kids at that point are going to want to start pretending to read. So they might not be relying on those words again, but they're telling their own story. And we should let them. We should encourage them by reading a page and then giving them a chance to kind of fill in the other parts of that story on that next page. And then by 4 years of age, we are expecting that they're pointing to the parts of the book. They know where the cover is. They even know when the book is upside down. They're able to, they know when we're skipping pages in a book because they're familiar with some of those words. They're seeing the pictures and they're noticing that that story is not making a lot of sense if we're not reading each of the pages on the book. So language and literacy are key and they're directly correlated and connected, which is why we need to make sure that this foundation is in place by kindergarten. And this just goes through kind of that 4 and 5-year-old a little bit more in depth. A lot of the strategies that we teach parents to utilize to really help with that language development are kind of fit under 4 categories. And again, I know as parents, we're using a lot of these. I think I often refer back to how busy our lifestyles are. And I think that we as parents need to find the time, whether that's bath time or whether that's bedtime, or whether that's honestly after you pick up your child from daycare and you're driving home, but find a time that we can really focus on language and we can model good language. I really truly loved with my kids picking them up from daycare and using that time in the car, talking to them about what they did during the day. You actually have those papers that have come home from daycare, and you can ask them questions and you can show an interest in what their pictures are. When we talk about modeling, when we talk about some of those strategies that can help develop your children's language, we talk about modeling and about, it is, as parents, we need to model good language and good sentence structure. We need to introduce them to new vocabulary. So even if a child is using 1 or 2 words, we can expand on what they're using and show them how a sentence can develop. For instance, if they say, my food, or more music. You can say, okay, Sarah, you want mom to turn up the music? You want me to turn the music louder? So you can expand and show them what a sentence should look like. It is not important I think parents often think we need to talk at a more simplified level with a child, and we don't. Kids learn to develop their language based on the models that they're given at home. We're going to talk about some opportunities even when you get home. And this might actually be a better time to do that, but we know we get home on a busy day, we get the kids out and we've got to start getting dinner ready. At that time, we can really model some great language. And I really encourage parents to narrate every single thing that they are saying at home, they're doing at home. So you're pulling out, mom is pulling out the pots and pans. We're going to get some eggs out of the refrigerator and we are going to break those eggs. I'm going to put those in the pan and we're going to scramble our eggs. Okay, next, I need to get some salt and pepper. So you're talking about everything you are doing. It teaches kids sequences. It teaches kids words, vocabulary. And again, kids need to hear words and hear language before they're going to start using it on their own. Recasting, so we talked a little bit about modeling. Recasting is not so dissimilar. Recasting is really saying what a child is saying, but saying it with other words. We often use this when a child is, from our perspective, saying something incorrectly. So if a child, for instance, is saying, me eat, you say, you're right, Sarah, you are eating. So you are sharing, you are correcting in a sense and providing a correct model for what they are expressing. Expansion, we talked about that a little bit. They're using one word. You're playing a game or you're playing with cars and they're pushing their car and they say, go. Something that would be very logical for us as a parent to say is to take that car and say, the car is going to you, or the car, I've got a yellow car. Let's push the yellow car. So you're expanding on something that they already have in front of them. And narrating, again, is talking about everything you're doing, whether that's you're turning on the water of the bathtub. Ooh, the water is cold. Let's turn up the hot water. And it sounds funny, but honestly, that is, those kids need to hear those words. So the more language we can use, and again, finding the time that works into your schedule. We know it's not realistic to do this all the time, but finding a time that is a quiet time during the day and in your routine that you can really expand language. A great example is when we take the kiddos to the playground. There's so much opportunity when you're already at that playground to introduce some of that core vocabulary. Stop, go, push, pull, down the slide, up the slide. So again, narrating all of your child's actions when you're already there at the playground. Labeling everything they're using. Making, honestly, we can use kind of this idea of to kind of cease what they're doing in order to encourage language. We as parents want to do everything. We can predict what our kids want. So, right, we're pushing them on the swing. They're going to want us to continue to push. But the minute we stop pushing, are they going to request that we push again? They should. So those are things that you can build in. Same thing when it comes time for snack time, where you get home and you give your child a snack. Let's not go ahead and predict that they're going to want us to give juice versus water versus milk. Let's ask them, what do you want? Do you want milk or juice? Same thing with a snack. Let's not just give them a snack. Let's either show them two options and let them pick, or let them request what they would like. Let them use their language instead of us always providing the language for them. Okay, same thing goes with some of the routines of packing up your bag to go on a trip or to go to the playground or go to school. Those are great routines to kind of talk through. Mom's putting this in the bag. Okay, we're going to zip up the bag and put it in the car. Again, we're introducing the kids to routines, a logical transgression and development in language. The library, great thing to incorporate. You all are probably going to the library anyways. And this is a great chance for a child to pick their own book. Nursery rhymes are something that are becoming a little bit more obsolete and sadly enough are. But nursery rhymes are really important. They teach the kids some of those pre-linguistic skills that are imperative, such as rhyming, right? Kids need to know how to rhyme. They need to know how to rhyme, what sound goes with that first sound. And that's what those nursery rhymes teach. It teaches them rhythm. It teaches them phrasing. So don't be hesitant to go through nursery rhymes, whether that's in a book or just doing nursery rhymes that you know. Same with songs, right? The Wheels on the Bus. All of those songs that are developed for kids are teaching vocabulary. Those kids are learning it without them knowing it by singing those songs and by singing those same songs day after day after day. Read aloud routines. So let's not, some of the best books, honestly, that we find at the library are those wordless books. And what I mean by wordless books is just books with pictures. It gives kids a chance to be creative. It doesn't constrain them or make them feel as if they don't know the words and that there's a certain way a story needs to be told. And once you start looking for wordless books, you'll be astounded as to how many are out there. And it allows you to kind of change the story every time you tell the story. So we really, really love those books. Likewise, we can find a lot of read aloud books, you all, that are already on YouTube. It might be a book that you've gotten from the library and somebody else is reading those books, and it gives those kids a cue as to when to turn. It's kind of like a beep or a bell, and it teaches those kids when to go ahead and turn the page. So go ahead and take a peek at those when you are at the library as well, or on YouTube. Other activities that we all are already doing or that we can incorporate into our routines, maybe on the weekends when things are a little bit quieter, and an opportunity for lots of language, are bubbles. Words that go with that are pop, blow, more bubbles, open, close, lots of those early words. And what kids don't love those bubbles? Taking kids on scavenger hunts, great opportunity to teach them new vocabulary. It doesn't have to be it can be just when we're out taking a walk and we can be talking about I spy, and you can all take turns spying something, whether it's teaching colors and I spy something that's green. Can you find something that's green? Or I spy something that's hard, and you pick up a rock. What do you see that's hard? So we can teach all kinds of words with I spy. Same thing as we're sitting honestly at a restaurant and you're waiting for those meals to be for those kids, they get impatient as their meal is coming their way, is to play I Spy, and have the kids point out something or describe something that they see that is right there in their environment. A great way of teaching vocabulary. So let's talk a little bit about when we should be concerned and what some of those red flags are. For a 1-year-old, and we as speech pathologists are often brought in on 12-month-old or 18-month-olds because they don't have some of these skills that we would expect of them. We really, really, really value early intervention and feel like as parents and caregivers and teachers, the sooner we can identify some of these red flags, the better it is. It gives us a longer runway, honestly, to address those needs and get those skills in place before those kids go to kindergarten. Kids pick up on things a lot more quickly when we can introduce them and when those delays are a little bit more mild than when they're 4 and 5 years of age and they're getting ready for kindergarten. Then those kiddos, it's the point where kids are getting frustrated and they are aware that they are not developing or they don't communicate the same way that their peers do. Once we have that frustration again, it becomes a real challenge to get through that. So at 12 months, a time that we should be concerned and we should really seek out some intervention from a speech pathologist is when those kids are not reacting to sound. When kids are not babbling. So when we don't hear them playing with their words, or when you are, you're changing their diapers and you're saying ma 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 ma, and they don't have eye contact with you and they're not trying to imitate those sounds. And also when they're not using gestures. So I'm sure a lot of you are introducing some signs, some very basic signs to help kids with communication. And if you haven't, I would really suggest you look into YouTubing that and introducing that. Because our goal as speech pathologists is to ensure that those kids can communicate their ideas even before they have those words. So if kids are not going and showing you things and pointing to things, if they're not able to communicate their wants and needs, or they're not gesturing in some way to get you or tugging on you for your attention, then that is something that we should be concerned about. Or screaming, quite honestly, with really loud voices to get your attention. That also, annoying though that might be, that is their attempt to communicate with you. And we need to be attending to that. At 2 years of age, we should be a little concerned and seek out some help if we don't see that kids are using their first words. They don't have honestly, about 50 words in their vocabulary at 24 months of age, and they're not developing new words every day. I so often harp on the fact that kids, by the point that they are 2 years of age, they've heard language for 2 years. There's so much research out there right now that is showing that these kids that have been exposed to language, that they are at 24 months of age and 2 years of age, we are really, really seeing that they are starting to use these new words every single day, and those vocabularies are really expanding. They should be able to follow directions. That is even without a gesture. So if you ask them to do something in the classroom and take their lunchbox and put it in the cubby, that is a routine. They should be able to understand your words, and they should be doing that. And definitely they need to be communicating and responding to the word no and stopping what they're doing when you say no. At 3 years of age, we would be, we really feel like speech should get involved if they have difficulty naming objects. So you're pointing to something in a book that they've seen a lot, a common object, and they're not able to not name those. That they're getting frustrated communicating, as we had mentioned. That they are not combining 2, and honestly, at 3 years of age, they're not combining 2 and 3 words to express themselves. I want milk. I need help. That is really expected at 3 years of age. And at 4 years, if we are not seeing, if they are not understood by others 100% of the time, and you are having difficulty understanding a child, they definitely need to get some speech. They really need to get that really at 3 years of age as well. Again, we go back to the fact that at 3-year-olds should be understood 75% of the time by somebody that's not with them day in and day out. Okay, so that is really in a nutshell the important information. Do you all have any specific questions for me? Okay. If you do, feel free to reach out to me either with an email or with, I know Kate, you've got my phone number, but feel free to just reach out and either direct parents towards us and to our website, which has a lot of information, YouTube channels, a lot of the mile markers and the developmental milestones for children. It also has some YouTube, some informational links that you all can log on ways of developing your child's language as well. So please feel free to look at that and use all the resources that are on there. And again, if you have any questions or you'd like us to get involved in a child, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to be able to come in and take a peek at a child that you have a concern about. Or parents, if you have questions, we're happy to talk about your child and help guide you as to whether that's something that we feel you should be concerned about, or give you some suggestions on how you can help your child through those some of those frustrations or challenges you're having.
Thank you so much. I know some of the parents through ProCare said they couldn't log in because they don't have like Microsoft accounts. So they were
Okay.
trying and couldn't do the Microsoft. So I'm so glad that you did this for us, that you were able to record it, because I really think sending out a link for more information for the parents, there are going to be people that are interested.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
We will send on that recording. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Mm-hmm.